All right, Carl, you ready for this? You threw on the suit coat for me.
Yeah,
All right. Let's get into it, man. And Aiden's going to cut this in and out. So if we need to, whatever you need,
good. You can chop out the bad stuff.
it will chop out the worst stuff. The bad stuff we'll keep because that brings the human element. But
Okay.
no. Nah, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, Carson. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. We're just going to dive right into it because we used to run these episodes for an hour, but everybody got bored after 20 minutes. So just cut them in half. And now I feel like we're always pressed for time. But the whole idea is this is to introduce the world to folks in insurance who are doing significant things and what got you there, right?
Yeah.
Not just, oh, I picked up the phone and I called leads but we can go all the way back to when you were 3 years old and you didn't get the Ninja Turtle popsicle with the gumball eyes or whatever it is, but you're doing some significant stuff. So I think the best place to start, Carl, is could you maybe introduce yourself and tell us all a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, all the cool things. I know the cool things, but let's make sure everybody else knows as well. So would you take just a couple minutes and get us up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Karl von Schwarz, even from the time I was a small child, I always imagined being in the insurance industry. Just kidding. Like most of you guys, I never really pictured a career in the insurance industry. But in early 2019, things had kind of changed there. So prior to that, I'd spent about 5 or 6 years in the automobile industry. Didn't do too bad in that. It was a decent thing. But as my family started to grow, I realized that working late nights in the dealership 6 days a week probably wasn't the future that I wanted for myself and for my family. And so I started pivoting and looking at other opportunities. The nice thing about that career that I was in is it taught me a lot about sales and about people. And so it was a good takeaway from it. I don't regret my time in it, but I definitely wish that I would have started here a little bit sooner than I did. And so, yeah, I guess it was May of 2019 that I decided that my automobile career was going to be ending and I was going to be moving into something new. And so insurance was one of the two things that was on my list. Went around to some of the bigger companies, Northwestern Mutual, things like that, did some interviews, and ended up finding my spot at that time with Colonial Life. And so I actually started doing B2B sales and building teams for them. And so for those that aren't familiar, basically what it is it's a voluntary employee benefits. And so nice thing is you get the opportunity to sit down with a lot of people and offer a lot of good products. But after of running that agency for a few years, I decided it was time to grow again and start adapting a little bit more and start changing up the way that I was going to go about gaining new business. So we ended up doing all of the employee benefits, so medical, HSA accounts, everything else that can be involved with it. Ended up building an agency that wasn't doing too bad. And then a few years after that, I got the opportunity to come work with a good friend of mine. He had been building a couple companies for a few years, and he decided that to fit in line with the rest of their businesses, they really needed to have somebody to help their clients with the insurance piece of it. So what they do is wealth management and wealth planning. And as insurance is a big part of that as well. And so in 2025, I made the jump. I sold that agency that I had been building for 5 or 6 years and partnered with him to come on and start doing this. And it's been a fun ride so far. Been able to build a pretty good team up to this point.
So there's a whole lot to unpack there. I want to start at the very beginning. Maybe not the very, very beginning, not like, some Moses stuff, or maybe before the Adam and Seth begat whoever. But no, kind of as you're getting into the insurance career, you started in automotive, you mentioned.
Yeah.
If there was, I know you well enough to know other folks don't know, but they're going to get to know you a little bit better here. But you've worked with hundreds and thousands of insurance agents over the last half a decade or more. And if you had to look at your career in automotive and pick one thing that you wish more insurance agents could figure out based on that automotive taught you, like a lesson you learned in automotive, you wish more insurance agents just got, and one bad habit that you wish didn't carry over between automotive and and this. What would those two things be? I think that's an interesting dichotomy always to kind of get into.
Yeah. So for your first question, it really comes down to me is a sense of urgency. Right. And so that was something that we carried on the sales floor. And this is true in most dealerships that you might visit, but you're going to work with a sales guy or sales girl. And, normally there's a little bit of back and forth between the sales management and the finance team. And those salespeople that you're working with, if you, if they let you get up and walk out of the store without buying a vehicle, they may not keep their job very long.
Yeah.
Right? There would be, we would call them a TO, right? A turnover. And so whether it was a sales manager or a finance director, or even just a standard F&I guy, somebody is coming out to talk with that client to figure out if we can overcome the objections, get some ink on some paper and help them take delivery of that vehicle. And so what I've seen with insurance, especially during my first few years when I was recruiting heavily and building a lot of teams, is insurance agents just don't seem to have that same sense of urgency, and they don't try to overcome the objectives to get to that sale, right? And I know that some of the things that we deal with can be a little bit more slow rolled than buying a vehicle. If we're looking at a large policy, or if we're looking at converting, millions of dollars into a different product, may not be a sit down and close them type of situation, but I have seen a lot of scenarios where we really just didn't do the best job at having that sense of urgency and pushing forward with the close, right? Because for most insurance agents, they're eating what they kill. And if you don't have that sense of urgency, you might be looking for an hourly type of job not too long after starting in this industry. And so I think that's the biggest thing that new agents can take on, is just understanding what the sales process should look like and then going for that close. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier in the day, actually, but for me, unless somebody tells me no 3 times, I'm still assuming the sale. I'm still overcoming objections. And so that's the biggest part of that. On your second question, might be a little bit more challenging.
It can be. It can.
Yeah. I've always been somebody that likes to build relationships and use relationship-based selling, but most people in the automotive industry are not that way. And so I've seen that a little bit better on the insurance side, right? Whereas you might be dealing with a sales guy in an automotive store who's like, I'm never going to see this cat again. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to try to get the deal. Whereas with insurance, at least a lot of the products that we're selling, you're going to have your renewals, you're going to have annual reviews. And so that's the biggest piece of it, is just making sure that I'm not in the mindset of, hey, let's just sell this thing, get it on the road, and never have to worry about it again.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. So here you are, fast forward, all these years, and blood, sweat, and tears in between. Like, you built agencies, you know what it is. And you've got this opportunity to work with, you said it was one of your old friends, doing some pretty significant stuff. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I partnered with a gentleman, his name is Jake Claver. So he's built a very large following in the digital asset space. He was another sales guy, worked a corporate job, had a corporate truck and credit card and all of that stuff, and wasn't doing bad for himself. But when the markets fell out in 2020 with COVID, he saw an opportunity. And so he had taken a little bit of cash that he had saved. I think he actually liquidated his retirement account as well. And he went all in on the stock market, and he did pretty well as everything rebounded. And then he ended up studying the digital asset space quite a bit and moving 100% of his funds into that market. He did very well there again over the next 12 to 18 months. And from there, he started a mastermind community about 3 years ago, while at the same time starting a few other businesses. And currently he owns Digital Ascension Group. So underneath Digital Ascension Group, we have Digital Wealth Partners. So they are the SEC registered RIA. I think currently they have around 30 advisors, and they were the quickest growing RIA in the world during 2025. So they surpassed $1 billion in AUM after about 16 or 18 months of actually being open and running business. And the nice thing about working with him is he just He runs fast. He does not slow down, and it's inspiring to see what he's built over the past few years in just a really relatively short amount of time. So he also has digital family office. It's a multifamily office. If you've heard of the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and other names like that, a lot of these very high net worth families actually employ people to work in their family office. So what he did is he set up that same structure for people that may not be at, $10 billion of net worth, but maybe they got, 15 or $20 million net worth, or maybe a little bit greater than that even. And they need some of the family office services, but maybe they're not large enough to need their own dedicated family office. There's been a few other supporting businesses that he's built as well, like the insurance agency. So what we're doing right now is we're helping a lot of their clients when it comes to estate taxes, figuring out those problems, tax mitigation, whether it be through a split dollar plan, or we're just trying to make sure that we can take care of those people based on where they're at today and what their future needs might look like.
Looking at, your next 6 months, 6 years, to you, what's the most exciting prospect on your mind? Because there's always something out there that makes you want to not get out of bed. For you, what's the piece that's like, you know what? I'm going to get out of bed anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been pretty cool what we've been able to build over the past, 4 or 5 months or so that we've really been operating this. And for me, it's kind of the building process. That's really what I like. I am also a producer, but I enjoy building businesses and helping people more than anything. I also like some of the products that we're going to have out here pretty soon. We should be first to market with a couple different things that are going to make the insurance industry a little bit sexier.
Do you mind sharing anything about that? Or if you can't, I understand. But if you can,
Yeah.
I like the
Yeah.
idea of insurance being sexier because I'm pretty sure I'm the one that coined the phrase, nobody ever woke up rampantly aroused about insurance. So
You're on point with that. Yeah. So, there's a lot of restrictions right now. We've got to follow all of the guidelines that are currently in force. We do think that some of those are going to be changing over the next few years. As you can imagine, digital assets are becoming more mainstream. The mainstream media is not saying that they're just a scam and they're just for drug traffickers and money launderers, right? It's actually being absorbed by the financial markets and institutions. It's going to become kind of the backbone of our new financial system over the next few years. And so as these things are being embedded, that's what we're looking to do on the insurance side as well. And so our sister company, Digital Wealth Partners, one of their fund managers is going to spin up a crypto IDF for us. And so that's going to include exposure for XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, I believe HBAR, maybe.
what's an IDF?
Absolutely. So an IDF is a regulated fund, but IDF stands for Insurance Dedicated Fund. And so we're going to be bringing this to the marketplace through Sally's and probably Spearhead as well. And so it won't just be us that are able to offer this product to clients, but it'll be out there in the marketplace for all advisors if they have the licensing to be able to market and offer that to their clients as well. And so getting into, where does an IDF fit in and what does that look like? It's really going to be under private placement life insurance and annuity products. And so for somebody to qualify for those types of products, they do have to be a qualified purchaser, meaning they've got to have at least 5 million in assets. And then the minimums that the few carriers that we work with here in the country have for clients, they usually want to see at least a couple $1 million in funding for one of those. A little bit lighter. I think it's $1 million on the annuity side. But the nice thing about it, and as you know, that growth inside of that insurance wrapper is tax deferred. And so if we can get the upside on these crypto assets inside of that wrapper, just imagine what it can do for people on the backside.
Right. So the endo and if you need to come back and provide some better context, please feel free. But it's like our clients, I could take my clients and say, hey, I know you really like the upside of crypto, but what if you could do crypto and not have the immediate taxable consequence of I want to exit my crypto simply because I invest in crypto and want to be out of it. Like I can see the upside, I can shift to a more risk managed place and not have to have this huge taxable consequence all at once. Is that kind of the benefit, or
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a benefit. And then obviously, most people know that you can borrow against insurance policies. PPLI is not exactly the same as borrowing against something like a whole life policy with a mutual carrier, but you can still leverage it up just like you can any other insurance policy. And so if you're able to not only get the tax deferred growth in there, and of course, nice thing about it for these clients is they don't have to manage it, right? Now the government has regulation about how it can be comprised and what assets can be in there and what the balance of those assets look like. But the fund manager is going to take care of that. There's really nothing that the policyholder has to worry about. So kind of like where you might see with an IUL, where you probably need to do an annual review, might make some changes to your allocations there. Fund manager just is going to take care of it for these clients. Now, inside of a private placement life insurance policy, you don't have to just use an IDF. And there are a lot of IDFs on the market. There's currently no crypto IDF, so we should be first to market on that. But you can hold a lot of different types of assets or get exposure to many different industries inside of a private placement policy where you just get a little bit more upside to it, right? So you're still getting all of the tax deferred treatment, creditor protection, and everything else that comes along with a good cash value life insurance policy. This just gives you the ability to get a little bit more exposure to the assets or the industries that you're a fan of.
So for the average agent, what could they take this information and move forward with? And then for the average client, because we don't just have agents listening in, we've got folks that just want to, you know, get a behind the curtains peek at what are insurance agents doing. But, what could mom and pa do as an insurance purchaser or an investor, as well as the average agent? How do they take this reality and plan for it moving forward?
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to see more and more adoption of this technology and the asset class in general over the next few years. So even if somebody's not a qualified purchaser today and they may not be able to participate in a private placement or in something like an IDF. There are some products that are available now. So BlackRock, I guess it was back in January. So they released one of their indexes that does have a little bit of exposure to Bitcoin. And so there's, no crazy minimums that have to be met for something like that. And I think that we're going to continue to see more and more development on that front where we're able to get exposure, whether it's inside of, an FIA, index universal life policy, or some of these others that are available on the market. I think that this time next year, there's going to be quite a few indexes that can be chosen from that are going to give people exposure to this asset class. And so while it may not be immediately today, if somebody doesn't qualify for something like a PPLI, I think in the very near future, they are going to have those options.
Karl, and I know you've been significantly invested in helping me help other agents too, and I appreciate that wholeheartedly for those agents, because there are so many of them that again find insurance, it's a phenomenal career and there's a lot of really neat things about it, but the way that it's been done for the last 50 or 100 years is getting a little lackluster, and they want a little more, right? And so if there was some emerging crypto stuff, even in the traditional insurance products, not even moving into the PPLI with the IDFs, obviously if you have some exposure there as an agent or even as a client, I think folks ought to reach out to you because, like you said, you guys are on the emerging market side. Nobody else is further ahead than what you guys have. But let's say they just want to do a fixed index annuity, a traditional fixed index annuity, an IUL, or this or that. We don't need to name companies or specific indexes, but if you were an agent or even a client who wanted to start to gain some digital asset exposure through traditional insurance product lines, where would you start to look, and what would you look for once you're there?
Yeah, so it's a little bit limited for the time being, but like I said, that's not going to last for very long. And so I think that, over the next 6 to 12 months, regardless of which carrier you're looking at, the majority of them are going to have indices that agents can select or, clients can request that are going to give them some exposure to this asset class. We obviously we want to be first to market with that IDF, and we are making a big push on getting that done here in the next 6 to 8 weeks. It should be live on the market. But for folks that are looking at traditional insurance products, waiting is never the best idea, right? I think we all know that. So getting something in force now, even if it doesn't have the exposure that you want to the digital asset space, you can change your allocations, right? So as these other indexes become available, if you already have your product set up, you'll be able to change your allocation, get exposure to that. And so you're still going to have now with an IUL or something like that, or FIA, you might have a cap like you do with a lot of indexes. But personal beliefs, I think the digital asset space is going to grow tremendously over the next 3, 4, 5 years. From what I see is it looks like that asset class is going to end up absorbing the volume and the value of most other asset classes in general. So even if you're capped on it, you're still going to do okay.
So, if you weren't doing what you do and you were the average agent,
Mhm.
what would you do? How
So
would
what
you,
would I do if I was wanting to get exposure to digital assets?
what would you do if you just wanted to make insurance sexier to your clients without stepping into the gray area where it's like, we're telling half truths or anything like that? How do you just make insurance sexier for what it is without going all the way down the rabbit hole? Because a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
his agents won't, and that's okay. They don't want to do the homework.
Yeah, so I think education is the biggest thing, right? Because most people know what a life insurance policy is, but they don't know how they can use it to mitigate taxes. They don't know how, I mean, even a lot of the things that I've learned in Rev agency going through the training that you put on, a lot of that was brand new to me whenever I started with your program a few years ago, even though I'd have been in the insurance industry for a few years already at that point. And so I think understanding how to position these products and then working with people that they actually benefit and just doing a little bit of education, more people are going to end up buying versus you having to sell them in that regard. And that's how we've built, or how my partner has built his businesses here as quickly as he has over the past few years. Is he's put out a ton of free content that's just educational, and he's been able to attract the right people by doing so. Right. And so kind of like you say in some of your trainings is, giving without expectations. I think that's the best thing that an insurance agent can do is just give without expectations and try to educate where appropriate.
Right. We're gonna
May
say,
not be as sexy as an answer you were hoping for, but if I wasn't in the space that I'm in now, I'm a regular insurance agent that's not dealing with a lot of clients that hold large amounts of digital assets. That's really the path that I would be walking down is let me go generate as much educational content as I can. Let me get it in front of as many people as possible. And then when I do get the opportunity to sit down with those business owners that need help in this type of planning, just showing them what these products can do for them. Because many business owners have no idea what a split dollar plan is, or a loan regime, or any of that stuff that you teach. And so that's the biggest part, is just providing that education, giving without expectations. The world is kind of reciprocal, right? You got to put it out there to get it back. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see with new agents. They kind of miss the mark on.
no, I agree 100%. Switching gears just a little bit, if you're okay with it.
Sure.
At one point, Carl, you didn't give a damn about any of this.
That's right.
You didn't. You were head down building an agency. You were so busy. It's like, man, I can't fit another fact or another opportunity in my mind. I can't do any of this, right?
Yeah.
What was the changing point for you where you were like, "Hey, I'm gonna geek out over this a little bit. I'm gonna learn crypto. I'm gonna learn about some of this other stuff. I'm gonna really dive into something outside of what pays me on a day-to-day basis." And I hope you don't mind me saying I'm certainly not making fun of you at all, but geek out, so to speak, so that you could start becoming an expert.
Yeah, so I did geek out quite a bit. I've put thousands of hours into studying this digital asset space over the past 5 years. And I think I really started doing it selfishly, right? I had seen other people make a lot of money in the space, and I hadn't really participated in it. And so I just, selfishly started looking into this for me and my family. and trying to figure out where's the space going? What's it really going to do? Is it going to be speculative forever? And the more hours I put in, the more it reaffirmed, some of the beliefs that other people around me were telling me and where the space is going to go and what it's going to look like over the next few years. And so while there was a lot of times where, maybe I only had a little bit of time on my commute to listen to a podcast or, somebody on YouTube that was talking about current events in the space and what was going on there, I absorbed as much as I could out of a selfish reason to wanting to better mine and my family's life. Where it really kind of clicked for me is once I saw what's truly happening in the space and going on behind the scenes, right? Because if you just listen to MSNBC or CNN or something like that, they're going to give you some headlines, but you're really only hearing what they want you to hear. And you got to kind of pull the curtain back, so to speak, and take a look at the wizard to figure out what's going on here. 5 years ago, I was pretty clueless on this stuff. I had bought a few digital assets and, portfolio started going down. So I sold them, right? And like, oh, this is a scam. And that's what most people will tell you. Even most wealth advisors right now, their firms haven't allowed them to talk about it. And they've been fed the narrative that this is a scam and you need to stay away from it and not touch it or you'll be punished, right? And so once you figure out that it's not a scam and that this asset class is going to revolutionize not only trade here in the country, but global trade, global settlement, the velocity of money, how much better everything is going to be, determining ownership, right? So assets are now being tokenized on some of these networks. You even have US treasuries that are now tokenized on the XRP ledger, on Solana, on Ethereum. And we're going to see more and more of that. And I think it's going to accelerate here very quickly once the Clarity Act gets passed and these institutions don't have any more handcuffs or any questions about what they can and can't do. And so kind of like we saw the internet boom, back in the early 2000s, this is going to be similar, but this is going to be a global absorption of most of the value that's out there in the world today. And so while it could end up being the 12th sector, I think it's really going to absorb the other 11 sectors to help facilitate the transfer of value, right? And so kind of rambling on at this point, but for me, I got into it for a selfish reason. The more I'd listened, the more I paid attention, the more I wanted to continue learning. And so it's no different than learning insurance when you're brand new. You have to dedicate yourself to whatever it is that you're trying to do, and you can't let your excuses get in your way. That's the biggest thing, right? Because there's a lot of things I could have done with the 3,000 hours that I've studied this space over the past 5 years. But if I had, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I guess that's kind of true with everything, right?
No, it absolutely is. Do you have I know we're kind of getting close to time here. Do you have a few more minutes? Because I have a few more questions. If not, I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you got into this world that is obviously so much sexier than insurance, what made you decide to not forsake insurance? Because you could have certainly gone all the way to the other end and just said, screw it, I'm just going to do crypto. You could have gotten in with DWP and just become a wealth advisor over there. You could have done all these things, but instead you decided to stay anchored in insurance, but bring that to it, which is it's so unique, like you said, that there's not even products on the market. You guys are literally bringing the products to market. And so it's like, I have to wonder, Karl, what made you say, screw it, I'm staying here, but I want to bring that here, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it did cross my mind, right, to go get my 65 and be an advisor over there. But I decided to stay in the insurance industry because I saw the opportunity to innovate and I had good partners to innovate with. And so, a lot of these institutions, whether they're running money market accounts or funds or ETFs or whatever it may be, they're going to be able to move a little bit quicker when it comes to adopting this asset class. But on the insurance side, I just saw a wide open opportunity. As we both know, a lot of these carriers that we work with even today, their technology is pretty far out of date. There's a lot of advances that could happen in that regard, even with what products are available at this time. And so I knew that at the speed that these carriers move is going to give me a little bit of time to get out there and make something happen before they could catch up. And so that's why I stuck with the industry and wanted to continue pushing forward. Is I just thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity that we have here to start bringing some of these products to market before any of these other carriers even think about it.
No, that's a great answer. So just kind of wrapping up here. The whole point of this podcast is to help insurance agents move the needle forward for themselves, for their clients, whatever the case may be. If you were to think of the average agent that you get a lot of exposure to them every week. And what, I guess, advice would you give them? That it's so easy for us to get so just inundated with our own crap that we don't innovate because we're just so stuck on what is. But what advice would you give to the average agent when it comes to making time to be innovative, making time to learn? And then if they have an opportunity that's outside of their scope, what do they do with it?
Yeah, for sure. So I used to be in that spot, right? Whenever I was running my previous agency, there was a, year and a half, 2 year period where I was just kind of in it. And I was going through the motions and I wasn't making efforts to get out of that regiment that I'd formed. And it really comes down to taking action, right? Even before understanding sometimes. If you can be somebody that forces yourself to take action and then learn from your mistakes as you go, you can be wildly successful in this industry. Being scared, being timid, and wanting to know everything about every product and every carrier and all of that before you try to go out and earn some business, it's a guaranteed recipe for failure. And so I think getting out of your own way is the biggest thing, and not setting limits on what you can do, not only in your career, but throughout your entire life, whether that's your home life, your family life, what you're building over here, or even if, insurance is a side gig for you, a side hustle at the time. Stop believing those limiting beliefs that sometimes are ingrained in us, even from family members who may not necessarily know what they're doing when they say some of those things. But, it's like the old saying, money doesn't grow on trees. It actually does. They print as much of it as they need to, and it's very abundant. Right? So it doesn't matter what your goal is. You can figure out the steps on how to get there, and it actually doesn't have to take as long as you might think. Right? So if you're an agent out there right now that's maybe struggling a little bit, you're doing 50 or 60 grand a year, there's not a whole lot stopping you other than yourself to 10xing that. Right? We both know agents that are making 50 grand a year, and we know agents that are making $500,000 a year. And it all comes down to what are they willing to do to get there, and can they get out of their own way? And a lot of that is just between the ears, right? Those self-limiting beliefs, you have to get rid of those, and then you have to put together a plan of action, right? You might still have to educate yourself as you go and learn from your mistakes, but failing due to inaction just cannot be an option.
Yeah. I think that's phenomenal advice. Damn, that's heavy. It's heavy advice, but it's the right advice. It's good stuff. All right, a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go. I swear to God.
Sure.
If an agent ran into an opportunity where the client wanted something sexier than they could provide, what would it look like to work with you as a strategic partnership so that you can help bring that sexy sizzle to it, but maybe, they can still get paid because they're insurance licensed and you're insurance licensed and everybody gets fed?
Yeah, great question. So we do have partnerships with people that are similar to what you're describing. And so if it's, if they're wanting to do a private placement, agent doesn't have their 6 and 63, and it's not something that they're able to manage. If they want to work out a referral partnership with us, we're happy to do that, and, happy to make it lucrative enough that it's worthwhile for everybody. I've formed a lot of partnerships over the years, and most of them didn't work out, and that's usually because it was too lopsided one way. And so for everybody that we've partnered with up to this point, we want it to be good enough for them that they have a reason to think about us and to recommend us, build a real relationship with us, right? We're here for the long term. We're going to continue to innovate and bring new products to the market. And we would love for as many agents to be a part of that as possible.
Yeah, you are very giving in that way. I know you and I talked, when was that, a month or two ago, about a partnership you were looking at bringing on. And you were like, well, they want this. What do you think? And I was like, give them half. Like, screw that. And you're like, no, I'm inclined to give it to them. As long as they'll keep doing good business with us, I'm inclined to give it to them. And you're nicer than I am.
I have an abundant mindset,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of people, if you've ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese, a lot of people have that mindset, right? You're going to store it away and pack rat it away and try to save every little bit that you can and take as much as you can. And then you look up one day and it's gone. That's because it wasn't a lot of cheese to start with, right? So when we're looking at the entire pie, I want a big pie. I'm okay with if my slice of that pie gets smaller and smaller as long as the pie keeps getting bigger and bigger.
But the pie's got to keep getting bigger and bigger.
It has to get bigger and bigger. What fun would this be if we weren't growing and doing the things that we know we can do?
I feel like the fun it would be is the same amount of fun of being trapped in the rat race, trapped in the hamster wheel.
Yeah,
And that's not fun at all.
it's not. And if you can bring something to your clients that, insurance, it's not the most sexy thing in the world. So if you can give it a little bit of spice, get some allocations to digital assets inside of that insurance wrapper, who knows what else it might unlock for you.
Yeah, I love that. Last question. If folks wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to say, hey, Karl, could you maybe teach me more about, digital assets and how they correlate to insurance? Or maybe I have a client that wants to look at an IDF or anything in between. How would folks reach out to you? Where would they get a hold of you? Social media, email, phone number, whatever you want to give out, it's all up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So email is going to be the best way. I'm on that constantly. Doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m. or 10 o'clock at night. So my email is just my first name. It's Karl, Karl, at Xure, Xure, legacy.com.
That's easy. I don't think it gets simpler than that.
No.
I'm thinking it's simpler than that. Anything else you want to put out there? Any podcasts or other resources you want folks to check out? Anything, websites?
Yeah, so I would imagine that a lot of the people after listening to this are probably going to go explore digital assets a little bit more. And so if you wanted to follow my partner, he's got a decent following and a lot of content over there on YouTube. And I believe it's just at Jake Claver on YouTube over there. And so pretty easy to find if you just even Google his name, it should bring up YouTube and everything else. And so I'd say, go check out the information that he puts out. Like I mentioned, it's really all educational. He has a goal of helping at least 1 million people become financially free during his lifetime. And so he is a giver and he's going to continue to do so. And, check them out. If you decide that getting involved is right for you, you can always reach out to our partners, our sister company, Digital Wealth Partners. So their website is digitalwealthpartners.net. They do have an intake form on there that people can fill out if they're interested in scheduling with an advisor. So they were charging for consultations, but they've recently pulled that off of there. So you're able to actually talk to a wealth advisor that can advise you on digital assets, whereas 99.9% of wealth advisors out there cannot touch it at this time.
And then I'm sure most folks watching this are going to be insurance agents or financial advisors, but we do get the one off here and there. Again, folks, mom, pa, or whatever, trying to peer back behind the curtains and see what's going on. If somebody was watching who's not an insurance agent or a financial advisor, but they wanted to reach out and chat with you or chat with your team about whatever it is y'all have going on and see what you guys can do for them, how would they get on your calendar?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to do that is go to our website or just send me an email. But if you want to go to our website, you can type in your name, contact information, and submit it through there as well. So that website is xureLegacy.com, just same as my email domain there. And so if they want to, we're pretty good at meeting people where they're at. We've got an awesome team now. They're fluid, whether it's, hey, I just need a term insurance policy. I'm young in my career. I've got a young family. I need something that's affordable where I can make sure that my dependents are going to be okay if something happened to me in the short term. We do a lot of those types of policies. We do a lot of IULs, whole lives, annuities, do a little bit of long-term care and disability as well. And so the nice thing about our team is the way that we've trained them is, these are no hassle consultations. We're not here to push you into buying anything. We want to be able to answer any questions that you have and then show you something that could end up being a good fit for the particular situation that you find yourself in. It doesn't matter if you are worth, $20,000 or if you're worth $200 million. We work with everybody and we just want to meet you where you're at.
Love that. All right. I know I said this like 3 times already, but last question. Is there anything else you want to leave the folks before we close this out?
So I would just say, for our insurance agents that are out there is take control over your life, right? You get to do this one time. And so, the thing about being a 1099 employee, which a lot of you guys are, is it's just up to you, right? You're not on a 40-hour-a-week schedule. You probably scroll your phones a little bit too much. Be intentional about what your goals are and how you're going to get there, and take action every single day. Be relentless with it, right? Because you can make 50 grand a year for the rest of your life, skate by on your bills and stuff, or you can turn this into a very successful career. But it is 100% on you. It's that person looking back in the mirror. So get rid of your limiting beliefs and start taking more action. I promise you can do a lot more than you're doing currently.
Yeah. Carl, I freaking love that. Thank you so much for being here, man. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, Carson. Great to see you.
Likewise. We'll see you.